Today's front pages for you. And first of all, the Mirror says about Time Rishi. They say the Chancellor is finally helping struggling families 5 months after they and Labour demanded it.
The Daily Express has the headline Rishi's £1,200 boost for £8 million, calling the Chancellor's energy bill a lifeline.
The Times says the Tories are split on the tax and spending bonanza. A number of ministers are believed to be reticent over the impact of the windfall tax on investment plans in the North Sea.
Yeah, the Mail feeling squeamish about how he's raised the money, asking when will Tories get back to just cutting taxes?
And in a bid to lighten the burden, the Independent says Rishi Sunak will offer a tax cut on drilling to incentivise continued investment by oil and gas companies.
Let's go through what is inside the papers then with Ella Whelan, a journalist, and Benedict Spence, a political commentator. Thanks for coming back in, guys.
Benedict, are we starting with the Ukraine invasion?
Yes.
What's happening thus far?
Ever upbeat. I mean, for weeks now, actually, we've been hearing relatively upbeat reports coming from Ukraine. Some people saying that Russia are doing very badly, and that in some cases Ukraine are even winning. And from my perspective, that's always seemed a little too upbeat, and actually now you can sense that there is a change in tone from that, and that's the Times headline is "Fighting reaches new intensity in eastern Donbass," and that is Western speak for saying Ukraine is losing in eastern Donbass. That's, you know, it's a very polite way of saying that they are finding things very difficult because the Russians, we were told, were being pushed back from places like Kharkiv. They were tactical retreats. They refocused their efforts on the Siversky Donets River, and they are doing quite well. And this is ultimately where we see, for all Ukraine's military it has performed very admirably, very impressively. It's been quite well armed, especially with the help of its Western allies. Russia still, for all it's very poorly equipped and poorly planned, has the majority in terms of numbers. It still does have an awful lot of firepower around which its military is based, and it is pushing forward. It is making progress in that part of the world. And, you know, when you step back and you take a look at the map, actually, of what Ukraine looked like before and after the invasion, you would struggle actually to say that it's going particularly well for Russia, but also it's not going especially well for Ukraine. Ukraine was...
And the eastern Donbass is an area where Russia would like... If they
yes.
can't win anything else, they would like to
Well,
win
this
that.
is the thing, if they can't win anything else, but they have won a lot of other things. You know, they do have Mariupol. Lots of people saying it's been leveled, but they still control it. They have Kherson. They're not going to lose Sevastopol or Crimea anytime soon. If they manage to secure Donetsk and Luhansk, it's not very far to push back to Kharkiv. It's not very far to push onto Dnipro. And all of a sudden, then, you're sitting in a position where you've got most of eastern Ukraine actually under the thumb of Russia, and if they were able to continue their blockade of Odessa as well on the Black Sea, that turns Ukraine into a landlocked country. Ultimately, it can't then survive as any sort of independent nation if it can't export any of its goods, if it can't get reinforcements from here, it can't break through the Russian blockade. And all of a sudden, you know, from being incredibly upbeat, we do have to face the facts, and that is that Ukraine is not going to emerge from this campaign in anything like the state it was before, even if we're able to sort of pass it off as a victory.
Yeah, whenever that campaign finishes. Ella, BBC cuts.
Yes, so we know that there has been an ongoing row about the licence fee, and Nadine Dorries, the Culture Secretary, made the announcement that there was going to be a freeze on the licence fee for 2 years for £159, which has left the BBC needing to find a significant amount of money, or with at least £285 million that it has to save. And one of the ways in which it's suggesting it will do that is to cut BBC 4, to make it no longer available on television, but available online, including CBBC and Radio 4 Extra. Now, there are lots of pieces across all of the papers extolling the virtues of particularly BBC 4, which is one of those channels that had something a little bit different. It had a lot of original shows, particularly stuff about documentaries, art history, and things like that. And obviously CBBC is something that I was raised on and lots of parents find very useful. But there is a question for the BBC more broadly, which is, along with things like BBC Sounds that it's been working on very closely with its radio content, about how to match the modern world and how to meet the challenge of the fact that, as you know here at GBNEWS, lots of viewers and listeners find their channels and enjoy their news in lots of different formats, and so you can't any longer be Luddite about this, and that online is not necessarily meaning gone forever, and that actually there are
No, in fact, you know, you look at the BBC iPlayer, which has to be one of the great success stories from the BBC, and putting CBBC and BBC4 online only on the iPlayer, I would have thought that's fine, because most parenting now is done with tablets, isn't it?
Yes, but I mean, the Guardian points out that there is a significant question to answer, which is that particularly with a channel like BBC4, it had BBC4 actually outstrips BBC3, which is much of a younger channel. It has those kind of young comedies, but BBC4 being the kind of channel that had older viewers, turning that online might pose some kind of there might be a drop-off, because it's not very likely that people who are in their 80s and 90s are going to want to be fiddling around with the iPlayer when they've spent all their years turning on the television. But then again, I think we patronise old people too often.
So do I.
Lots of people are able to do it just as well, learn how to use an app, learn how to use iPlayer online. So the bigger question is the future of the BBC and whether it can meet the kind of challenges that not just Nadine Dorries is putting against it, but also viewing numbers are.
Yeah. What do you make of it, Benedict?
I mean, I don't know. I think the BBC churns out an awful lot of dross when it comes to entertainment, but BBC4 I often found, perhaps this is just, my personal taste, but I actually found it was the best in terms of public service broadcasting. Actually, I think it performed a very good service, providing us a slightly more sort of high-end, factually sort of interesting channel. So I do, it worries me to see actually that the attitude is that this is something that can just be shunted off, and doesn't necessarily have to be at the forefront, whereas things like BBC Three are being brought back online. Often whenever I go on the BBC, I find actually everything is I understand it has to cater for everybody, but I often find it doesn't really cater for people like me, who would like something that isn't pop culture, ultimately.
Go to the iPlayer, it's brilliant. What about vintage IKEA furniture?
Well, I mean, we've been doing a lot of Swedish
Swedish retro music.
Yeah, so it's not just ABBA. Cost of living crisis beginning to bite. If you're thinking you might need to raise some money, well, a £20 chair from 1959 at IKEA. It's called the Cavelli.
I didn't know IKEA was going in 1959.
Only in Sweden, I assume. I mean, maybe you could import stuff here. I don't know. Maybe get a mail order catalogue or something. It was a little less easy to sort of buy things back in the day. But it recently sold for £15,500. Something you pay £20 for in 1959, even if you take inflation into account.
A really appalling-looking chair.
Yes, absolutely dreadful.
Screams 1959 at you.
It does. I'd be happy to sell it.
A bit of a design icon, really.
Absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of stuff here.
Apparently, there is a market now in vintage IKEA furniture.
Then we've got the chair here. There's a picture of the chair itself.
It's yellow, looks like horrible woolly fabric, and it's got it's just a weird shape. As I said, it screams 1959 at you, but
if you're sitting on one of them now, you're sitting on a fortune.
Yeah.
I don't think anything they make now would last 60 years. So I think this must be a pretty good bit of kit. Well, I don't know. I've gone through a lot of those sort of Billy shelves. They just fall apart after.
Can we just go back to that picture? Can we just bring those pictures back of that Swedish furniture, actually? Because here it comes. Because the one on the far right, is that a chair?
Yes, it just looks like a wire frame.
If you're sitting on that watching us this morning, then
you need a cushion.
Yeah, I think so.
That cost £23 when it was bought, and it's now worth at least $875.
Yeah.
And I suppose if you go to an online auction site, you'd probably find some of these little gems if you really want them in your living room.
Yeah, see, there is value in old Swedish things this morning. Doesn't matter if you're a musician or a piece of furniture.
Very true.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
There you go.
Thank you so
guys,
much.
thank you.
Is that our last gig with you? Yes, are you off now?
I think so.
You're off, yeah.
I could stay if you want.
Well, we might find it useful. Thank you very much indeed for joining us today.